Welcome to Cinema Gulp, I'm Ben.
And this is John, and today we're going to do a Gulp review for Wonder Woman.
The first ever female-led superhero film is finally here. What else is finally here, you ask? Well, in my opinion, a good DC movie, of course. Patty Jenkins, Gal Gadot / Gadot and Chris Pine team up for a swashbuckling adventure film that features amazing action sequences, beautiful set design, the best storytelling that DC has conjured up so far, and a whole island of hot Amazonian women. John, what did you think of Wonder Woman?
Well, I don't think we saw eye to eye on Wonder Woman. We'd have a little difference of opinion. I didn't love this movie. I didn't have a high anticipation for it. Wonder Woman's not my thing. I'm actually getting kind of sick of comic book movies at this point. And this works well as an origin story, but I just found the film overall to be a little bit bland for me. I felt like the direction by Patty Jenkins, other than her using slow motion in the action scenes, which is a staple for every comic book movie these days. So I didn't find anything interesting or new in terms of her direction. I just felt the film had kind of a low energy for me. I felt like the performances had low energy. I felt that the direction had a low energy. Now, one thing that we ran into in our particular theater that really sucked for this movie was the sound was really low in our particular theater.
So low.
And that sucked some of the energy out of the film, definitely.
I want to talk about the strong points of the movie because I disagree with you completely. I thought Patty Jenkins clearly knew what she was doing as far as tone, because I thought this movie had a hopeful tone and it had a funny tone. Like, it was the funniest DC movie outside of Suicide Squad, which they tried to make a comedy late in the game when they re-edited the fucking movie. There's problems with this movie that I can't wrap my brain around, especially late in the third act, and it's due to some drastic change in tone, I would say. Decisions that that have to be made when you're like, okay, so what are we going to do? What's going to be the big baddie? What's going to be the villain? I guess in that sense, the end of the film does kind of turn into your typical DC trapping where it's like, okay, we have to go big. And the whole movie before that had this like almost Captain America First Avenger, Rocketeer, like Indiana Jones type thing a little bit. That's all due to Chris Pine, who once again, Pine shines.
Pine was the star of the show for me. He was the only thing in the movie I was really enjoying. I thought he's so charming. He brings a lot of wit to the role and a lot of physical comedy, I thought.
This movie's just as much his as it is Gal Gadot's, because he's not really a supporting cast member. The story is about him. He needs her, so she's kind of just doing things that he is already going to do, you know, so it's kind of his story.
Yeah, I'm really glad there was so much focus on him in the film, because as I said, Gal Gadot, actually, I think she did a great job of bringing to life the character that I've seen in comic books. She really looks the part, I think. She did a fine job in her performance for acting. I think it's probably the best I've seen her do with her various roles in Fast and the Furious movies. She's not asked to do a lot. So I think she really brought it in this film. I could see her moving forward as the character and kind of enjoy her. But I don't know, maybe I'm just not a big Wonder Woman fan. Just the look of it, the way it was shot, the costumes in those scenes, it just felt cheap and fake to me. I really struggled in the first act of this film to get into it because I felt like I was being given a history lesson on Greek mythology, and then immediately there was terrible accents by people like Robin Wright and Connie Nielsen, I think it is. Just I was not buying into that world of the Amazonian world that set this whole movie off. And then I was hoping by the second act, when it was Chris Pine and her off on the adventure and you know, getting back to Europe and dealing with the war and stuff, I was hoping that maybe I would get sucked into the film by that point.
Robin Wright could have not spoke in the movie. I don't know what it is. That chick is so sexy. She's just got these big beefy arms and this big mean badass look on her face, and she's kicking the shit out of everybody. I would say out of the three acts, obviously the second act to me stands out completely. I loved the second act of this movie. Everything from the fish out of water stuff of Gal Gadot, because I agree with you, I thought she was great. I don't know why people were so... I mean, I'd never seen her do much outside of Fast and Furious, so I didn't have much to go off of, but I thought she was perfect. She commanded the screen, and she was funny and goofy when she was playing just Diana and she's walking around, you know, London or whatever. I thought that stuff worked, and it was nice to see that the movie wasn't sour and depressing. It had some hokey villain stuff going on and some pretty goofy, ridiculous plotting, but that's why I kind of think this is like the first Avenger of the DC I don't really know what the hell was going on in the first act. I'm just going to admit that right now. I zoned the fuck out during that like Greek mythology history lesson with all the stuff on the writing on the wall. I completely zoned out. So I missed whatever the hell. Well, I zoned out first because we could barely hear it. And second of all, because I'm like, wow, this movie has some balls. It's opening up and really boring you fast with a lot of, like you said, some pretty shitty accents.
Anacondas are a perfect killing machine.
I was just about to start.
It's a terrible parcel to the Periwinkle Blueberries.
I wasn't big on the first act. I think the meat of the story and the action scenes in the second act I just loved. You asked, did anything give you the chills? Yes, that battlefield scene where she's just charging towards the Germans and she's using that shield, and I thought that was fucking awesome. Like, I loved that stuff. I'm convinced with her. I don't care if it's a male or female superhero. I just want to be convinced of the character. I am 100% by her. And yeah, there's slow motion action scenes and stuff like that.
I'm right there with you. I don't need it to be male, female. It doesn't matter to me. I just want an awesome action hero.
Yeah.
I mean, the physicality of Gal Gadot in these scenes, it's like, fine, okay, she does it as good as Scarlett Johansson. I had issues with the believability of like the world, the Amazonian world and stuff, like their defenses. I did not buy into their world and how they've existed the way they do up to that point in history. It did not seem believable at all to me.
As far as acts go, they're all very different. I guess his name is Matthew Jensen, the cinematographer. And I loved the cinematography in this movie. I think you just said it was just run-of-the-mill. I don't know what was there and what wasn't there when they were on the island. I don't know what was just rendered backgrounds or what was real, but I thought it got really interesting on the battlefield stuff again. Are there any sets? Are they location anywhere, or is it all, who knows? Because a lot of the island stuff seemed really washed out. It wasn't very colorful. It wasn't very inventive.
No.
Except maybe like the glow-in-the-dark water.
Yeah.
Where Chris Pine is like obsessively washing his dick in.
There's the obvious contrast between the Amazonian homeworld and London during World War I, which is meant to look gray, drab, and devoid of color. Definitely was kind of a mix of things we had seen in Man of Steel, Thor, and other fantasy movies, but just without a spark of imagination, in my opinion.
Well, because the island is all female, my imagination was going fucking wild. I don't know about you.
Amazon women on the move.
It just looked better than the other DC movies that were all trying to go with this really similar blackest of the black dark tone.
Yeah.
This one had like I said, it had like hopeful colors and hopeful tone.
They're going to keep moving away from that. It was a nice step up from what we've seen the last 2 or 3 that they've put out. This one was definitely better than those. So I definitely say at this point probably the best thing the DC universe has to offer.
Yeah.
There's actually almost, I think, 3 specific scenes in the film that start going almost pornographic in the conversations and what they're trying to get you to think about in these scenes. Which was
that was the scene where Wonder Woman walks into Chris Pine washing his dick in the glow-in-the-dark water, and then she just proceeds to talk into his dick like she's playing karaoke or something. I think it's a really fun, funny, hopeful. I think it's a sexy movie. Just some of the imagery is really interesting. I think that it takes chances with its violence and stuff too, especially her as a superhero. I mean, she just fucking murders people.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. It seemed like they gave her a moment to think about, is there another way I can handle the situation? But no, she just
like,
went
fuck
for
it, and just starts dicing people up with her sword. There's plot holes in this movie that maybe in a second viewing will make more sense. I'm not quite sure yet. And there's a couple decisions made towards the end that I'm still on the fence on whether or not I agree with or not. But Wonder Woman as a whole, the character, like, that's everything I wanted to see out of Superman. I kept thinking that the entire movie. I'm like, this is how they should have introduced the Man of Steel. But instead, he wasn't that guy. He was just a selfish douchebag.
How the character is naive in the film really works. It plays into the fish out of water comedy that's in the film. That was a part that I thought felt a lot like the Thor film. And she really did learn by the end of the film. That was great for her character arc, for her to be that way and start learning the real ways of the world and what war really means to the world. And that she can't save everybody, even though she's willing to try.
This movie showcases those themes of like hope, good. Chris Pine has some of the best dialogue because he's kind of a bridge between her and those other people. Like he is a good person, but he doesn't have powers. So he knows his limitations on who he can save and what he can do to make a difference. There's a lot of good dialogue in this movie about, like, you can't stop a war by defeating that main bad guy, because that's just a face of the problem. I love it when he says, like, every one of these people are bad. You can't just kill one guy and end the war. All these people want to be here. For a comic book movie to explain war that well.
They even make a point of the good guys can be seen as bad as well. You're just as guilty to be a part of this war. Even though you're defending yourself, you're still perpetuating the war. I think the themes in the film work really well. I just felt that as a comic book movie, as an action movie, which it's not, it's got a lot of storytelling in it that's not focused on action.
No, there's long portions with no action in this movie.
Yeah, so to call it just a straight up action movie, it's trying to do a little bit more than that. But I still felt that the movie fell a bit flat for my taste.
I love the score of this movie. Every single part of it. Like the pulse-pounding drums during the action scenes I loved. I loved the soft, tender score that went on during some of the Pine and Gadot scenes. Yeah, I loved all the music. I thought it was perfect. And I love that theme song that they have going for her. It's so cool.
So I'm going to give Wonder Woman slightly a low score, but I think audiences would actually really enjoy this movie. I'm just a hard critic to please, especially when it's an action movie or the 17th comic book movie telling an origin story that I'm just getting a little bit bored by. So I'm going to give this a 4.5. I felt there was a lack of energy in this
Bastard.
film. And I really think...
Heartless.
I know. I think I may watch it again in a better theater with better sound quality, because I do think that had an issue with why I felt there was low energy in this movie. And really, when Chris Pine, who is a big part of this movie and really helps this movie stay entertaining as much as he can, but when he's kind of the only thing I really enjoyed from the film, I can't go too high with my score.
Okay, so for my Gulp score, I loved Chris Pine just like you did in this movie. Scene stealer. He's just becoming one of the best guys to watch out for. He's solid in everything these days. I loved Gal Gadot /Gadot/Gadot. She surprised the shit out of me in this movie with all the different ways she had to play her character, from the naive side to like the confident action side to the cold-blooded murder. I love the tone. I love the action scenes. I love the score. I just thought it was a really fun movie. The oversaturation of these types of movies make it unfair for some of them that want to come out and actually tell a good story with a good character and an arc. But because it's Wonder Woman, and to me that was always a character I didn't know a lot about, for me it was cool to see the origin, because it hadn't been told on the big screen before. It wasn't Batman or Spider-Man or Superman that we've seen 50 times. Super solid movie for me. I had a blast. I'm going to give this movie 8 gulps. And to close, I'll say that I really, really hated Batman vs. Superman. I'm kind of 50-50 on Man of Steel, but on a personal note, Cinema Gulp definitely wants to give thoughts and prayers to Zack Snyder and his family. Okay, so that was it for us. Go out and see Wonder Woman.
Go out and see Wonder Woman, but not at the Foothill Theater in theater number 9, because you won't be able to hear it.
As always, if you like this review, please leave some comments down in the comment section below. Click like and or subscribe, please.
Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and now on Tumblr as well. Look for us at Cinema Gulp. This is John.
And this is Ben. We drink your cinema.
I drink it up!
Comme un garçon, j'ai les cheveux longs. Comme un garçon, je porte un blouson. Un médaillon, un gros ceinturon. Comme un garçon, moi je suis têtu. Et bien souvent, moi je distribue